Welcome everybody, a Film Fan 108, and I am in Rochester, New York. I'm actually at the Little Theater here. They're playing this new horror movie called Candy Corn. I had heard about it from a friend, and it looks really interesting. It kind of looks really cool. Cool little sort of retro horror film. Kind of looks like it's like taking homage from the 80s. And I decided to drive an hour and a half out of my way to come and see this movie. So I don't know what I'm in store for. I've never been to this actual theater before at all. So all of this is brand new to me, guys. But let's go in, let's check the theater out, and let's hopefully have a really cool experience seeing Candy Corn. Let's head in. So I actually found it. It's actually in the back of the building, right here. It was actually supposed to be in the front, but they're actually doing renovations to the place right now. So yeah, there's like a little cafe and some theaters. So I guess we'll go in and pay for our ticket. One for candy corn?
Candy corn, one?
Yes.
It's going to be $9.
No, sir.
There you go.
Thank you, sir. Actually, guys, you know, right now it's not that bad in here. It's a really small theater. It's got just a few screening rooms in it, and that's it. And it's very small. It's only got, like, you know, not a lot of seating in it as far as I can tell right now. But it's very small, very quaint, very personal, and they've got so many like really wonderful posters and really cool little prints all around, which is really awesome here. In fact, oh my god, I wish I had that Ed Wood poster. You have no idea. Ed Wood is one of my favorite films of all time. I would literally die to get that poster. Wow, man. So yeah, it's actually not bad so far. Really nice. Again, really small, but I don't mind a small theater. A little bit more personal. I like that. Well, not bad so far. Let's grab a seat. Now I got my seat, guys, and I tried entering into that raffle to pick up the poster for Candy Corn. I don't really think I'm gonna win it because, to be honest with you, I really don't win those type of things anyways, but might as well try. But yeah, this, like I said, this theater is it's very personal. There's not a lot of seating here, but it's actually not bad here. The screen is pretty big, and there's actually a lot more people here than I thought there was going to be, because honestly, I didn't think there was going to be a lot of people at this screening tonight, especially for something like a newer independent horror film. I didn't really think we'd see that, but hey, not bad at all for horror, for sure. And the director is actually here tonight. He's actually doing sort of a Q&A, which is actually pretty cool too. So yeah, actually not bad. They're actually right now playing a Charlie Brown sort of Halloween special, so before the movie. But yeah, I'm just relaxing and waiting for the movie and the Q&A. Hopefully it's good.
Hello. Hey everybody, how's it going? Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. My name is Ben Scrivens. I run a company called Fright Rags. We work with the Little to do Saturday Night Rewind. Has everybody been to a Saturday Night Rewind screening before? Raise your hands. Yeah. Oh shit, that's awesome. Great. Thank you for coming out. We are really excited about tonight. I hope everybody knows about Candy Corn. We've been really trying to promote it. It just came out, what, 17th, right Josh? Is that what it was? Really excited to show it on the big screen, and you know, it's just great to have everybody out here, so thank you so much. Before I introduce Josh, I want to just go over what we've got coming up for the next month. So we've got a kick-ass lineup for October. Is Eric gonna? Oh, is he gonna change the screen? No, he's not gonna change the screen. Okay, I guess it's just me talking now. So, if you didn't know, we are doing a whole Nightmare on Elm Street series next month. We're doing 1, 2, 3, and New Nightmare every week. And for the New Nightmare, we've got Heather Langenkamp coming to do a Skype Q&A, so make sure to be here for that. And on October 25th, that Friday, we are showing a 35mm print of Halloween, so make sure to do that. This is our, what, 4th year doing that, I think, so really excited to keep showing that every year and keeping the love for that film alive. And what I'd like to do right now, before we give away our poster, is introduce the man himself, Josh Hasty, writer and director of Candy Corn. Come on up here, Josh. We are doing a Q&A afterward, but I did want to have him say a couple words before we begin.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you guys for coming out. Thank you to the Little, and I'm assuming it's not just you. There's probably a lot of people here that made this happen, so thank you. Yeah, I don't know how much you know about Candy Corn. It's every sense of the definition a passion project that I did with a small group of amazingly talented people. And our objective was to transport you back to the late 70s, early 80s, and just feel like you're watching something that was found in the storage room at your local Blockbuster. So I hope you have fun watching it. Please don't hurt yourselves overthinking it. A lot of people seem to do that. This isn't Hereditary. This is a fun homage to slashers and the season of Halloween and everything I love about all of that, that by looking around here, you probably love just as much as I do. So, yeah, thank you to Fright Rags and the Little and all of you guys for being here, and I hope you enjoy it. And I'll hope you stick around for the Q&A and ask me some weird questions. I hope we have answers. Thank you guys.
Looking for that juicy caffeine? How about a special drink to warm your belly? That's right, folks. I'm talking about that Java medicine. Liquid Joe, grade A kangaroo hooch. Hot coffee, just how Mama used to make it.
All right. Thank you all for sticking around. Did you like it? Yeah! Josh, you ready to do a Q&A up here?
Let's do it.
All right. Sit over here. I like the armor thing, seeing myself. That was my favorite. Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Yeah. So, for those of you who don't know, it's been a pretty long road to get this thing off the ground and on the screen. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How long it's been? What you had to go through? You know.
Yeah, it's been 3 years. So everything you just saw was shot in 4 separate productions over about 2 years. So raising the fund, the first round of funding was nearly impossible. That's why Courtney Gaines came on as a producer to try to help raise some money, which was great. It raised a little bit, I think a total of 3 days worth of production. So that led to having to take another hiatus, and then, you know, it was insane. The production of this thing is, the fact that we just watched 85 minutes of something is nothing short of a miracle.
So what you're saying is that someone did not just come to your house and gave you a buttload of money to make this film?
No, and even when I got the money, it was not a buttload of money. It was about as much as Tony Todd should have been paid. We probably got paid on Final Destination. Not kidding at all. So, yeah, I mean, it was, like I said before, it was a labor of love, but beyond that, it was just, I mean, it was insane. It was almost impossible. Like every exterior shot in the movie was shot a year and a half before every interior shot of the movie. So like the example I always use is like when Bramford pulls up to the police station and then walks in. The police station, that was the first shot we filmed in the entire film. So like right after he sees the bloody kid. So he walks in, and then everything inside, he walks in there and Carol's sitting there with Marcy. That was a year and a half later, and like, you know, days away. What I mean by that is all the exterior stuff's in Ohio, all the interior stuff was in LA. So that is just compounded and compounded of examples like that, that I'm fortunately starting to put into the back of my memory. But yeah, I mean, even when we got on set, no time, no money. Like Justin Mabry, he played Conrad. He also made Jacob's mask. He sculpted that on his own time with his own money, while his wife was in the other room pregnant with her 4th child. It wasn't just a labor of love for me, it was a labor of love for all of these people. And yeah, we're just happy that we finished it. Generally speaking, people seem to like it.
What was the inspiration to even, I mean, obviously you want to be a filmmaker, you want to make movies, but what's the inspiration for Candy Corn specifically?
So I wanted to create something, you know, when the opportunity arose to do something with the people, you know, the production designer on that is, I met when I was working with Rob Zombie. He's Rob's production designer. We both wanted to work together, and then you meet, you know, like Justin Mabry and his team, and it just sort of culminated into this, like, man, let's make something. All those guys do it for a living. They're tired of all the Hollywood BS, so they just wanted to do something for fun. And I'm from Ohio. I have a lot of free locations there, and that sort of was the nucleus of, all right, let's build it out from that. Write what you know. I wrote around the locations that I know. I don't know if you're into slashers at all, but
A little bit.
I love slashers, but I also love, you know, it sounds cliche now because I feel like Walmart probably sells Kubrick t-shirts, but I'm obsessed with Stanley Kubrick and the films that, you know, I've been told many times, which I take as a compliment, that parts of Candy Corn are painstakingly slow. I love that. You know, that's Iñárritu, that's Kubrick, that's early Scorsese. So it was a lot of, you know, taking those elements and trying to tell us an original story, which Hollywood refuses to do right now. That was another reason it was very difficult to raise the money. This was an original idea. It's like, well, only remakes make money. So you know, it was all those ideas of creating something original, creating something that I knew I could shoot at the locations that I knew I had, and doing it, you know, it's been called an artsy slasher and whatever, like, you know, just taking everything I love about the Halloween season, about the genre, about the subgenre, and about what I love about cinema, and just trying to, you know, for better or for worse, cram that into one 85-minute feature.
So when you talk about influences, like, obviously you talk about the Kubrick influence and all that, like, what other, I mean, we talked about it earlier, and you even pulled up stuff that I didn't even know about in terms of the not Easter eggs, but like, you know, thinking about Marcy's character and how she was played and things like that. Like, what are those things on the screen that maybe you can speak to, like, the choices that you decided to make in terms of whether it's how someone plays a role or whatever, and how that...
Yeah, well, I wrote a fine line in Candy Corn of some stuff I deliberately ripped off, like Halloween, putting Halloween in the middle of the fall-time street, like, because I don't give a shit. It's like, it's Halloween, like, you can't just nod to Halloween at this point. You either rip it off or you don't acknowledge it. And it's Halloween, it's the greatest, so I wanted to somehow, you know, that. But there's a ton of Twin Peaks. I don't know if someone whispered that. Did somebody say? Marcy is Lucy Moran. Yeah, so a lot of Twin Peaks, a lot of X-Files. As far as characters go, as far as what my inspiration was for the storyline and the execution, really it was 3 films. It was John Carpenter's Halloween, Happy Birthday to Me, and Dark Night of the Scarecrow. So I figured if I could take all 3 of those, and really the storyline, like, people love on the internet, they're always like, it's basically Pumpkinhead. Like, no, it's basically not. If you're gonna basically call it something, it's basically The Crow. It's the night before Halloween, he gets killed, he comes back to seek revenge, and then he's able to rest. Question mark? You know, so it's like, there's all those things, but I think it, you know, it just depends on, I guess, the person and what they like. But for me, those 3 films, but then, like, there's Rosemary's Baby references. Rosemary's Baby is my favorite of all things in life, period. So, like, it's so funny people don't really pick up on it, which I think is good, but like Bramford, Sheriff Bramford's name is named after the Bramford Apartments that Guy and Rosemary Woodhouse live in, and Satan comes and impregnates Rosemary. Lucy is obviously, you know, the big inspiration for Marcy's character. Bobby from Twin Peaks, basically Mike. You know, I try to do that all throughout, again, without just ripping it off, but I love those things, and this is, you know, it's been said a billion times by now, but it's a love letter to all those things. And so, I mean, there's few things, like even Jacob Atkins, I came up with his name because it's a first and last name with 2 syllables in the first name, 2 syllables in the last name. Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger. You know, like all the little things, again, that aren't just ripping it off, but sort of paying homage to it. And I found that people, you said someone commented on Fright Rag's post that they watched it 6 times over the weekend. And I get those messages on Instagram, like, holy shit, I didn't notice this. And then people ask me, like, did you notice that? Oh my God, yeah, that's a great point. You know, so that's really fun for me too. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question. You did.
What I loved about the movie is that it takes these people, actors that we know, Tony Todd, PJ Soles, Courtney Gaines, even Poncho, but it doesn't rely on them in a way that it wouldn't work without them, I guess. Like, there's a lot of movies that have been made out there now, low budget or whatever. It's like, no, but it features like all the people you love from the 80s movies, wink wink nudge nudge, you're gonna love it because it's all your favorite people. But this is like, no, it's got those people in it, but they're really, it's a story, they're really acting. But what I want to know is what was it like working with them? I mean, because it's great to see people that you do know from other things in there, but it's done in such a ham-fisted way where it's like, no, look, it's Tony Todd, hey, look, you know. But what was it like working with them?
Yeah, I mean, well, we made a deliberate effort to make it the opposite of that, which some people love. And, you know, it's funny because Tony will text me now and like, his whole reasoning for coming on to Candy Corn was that it wasn't that. When he read the character, he was like, it's not a very big character. I love that. You know, like it was like, he knew I wanted a good character, a good actor to play that character. Didn't matter if he was Tony Todd or who it was. And that was why he was drawn to it, because he was like, it's clearly an important character. There's subtext, a lot of history between he and Lester, Dr. Death. And it's not just saying, hey, it's Tony Todd. You know, he's going to be in every frame, standing there, whatever. So that was really cool, and it's really fun now to see the reactions. And some people get that, what you just said, and then other people, you know, are like, why isn't Tony in the entire thing, every single frame? I want to see more Tony. And it's cool now because I get to, you know, joke with Tony, where it's like, we got him. You know, like they're talking about the fact that you're not just using me to get asses in the seat and, you know, just, lack of better terms, whore out Tony Todd through the whole movie. So in that essence, it was really great, because that told me that they were on the same page as me, that they also weren't just showing up for a paycheck, because they generally get pretty nice paychecks and they get paid per day. He didn't care if he was there for 1 day or 20 days. He was there to serve the story. And so I thought that was really cool. But they're all method actors, and I like working with method actors. I prefer, even if you're not a method actor, I call everybody by their character name rather than their human name. And I mean, there are actors, I always forget the guy that plays Bobby. I always forget his name because I never really met him. He just sort of showed up to set. Like, we didn't have rehearsals or anything like that, so that was really cool. So when people ask me that, like, what was it like working with them? It sounds kind of weird, but I don't know what it was like to work with PJ. I know what it's like you do now, like talking with PJ, and she's PJ, but when we were on set, she was Marcy. Like, I didn't meet PJ until she was in Marcy's wardrobe and hair for the first time. And then from then on, it was just like, we didn't have time to talk about what it was like to work on Carrie or whatever. It was just like, all right, get to the next shot. So that was fun. It was really fun to work with them as characters that had been in my head for 3 years. And then somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh shit, this is Tony Todd. But he's not acting, like, he has no ego at all. He's the most professional dude. You know, so it was, I don't know, it was wild. And looking back on it, it was like, I guess sometimes I kind of wish I would have stopped and been like, this is the candy. But I never had time to think about that. It was just like, cool, we're 3 hours behind. Hurry up, let's go.
At least now you know him now, so you can just, you can text him and say, hey, you're Candyman.
Let me do that real quick.
Did you know that?
Yeah. Yeah, so it was great. They're all awesome, and they were super supportive. Tony and Courtney both came on as producers of the film because they loved it, believed in it. PJ does interviews every chance she can get and talks about her experience. This film, as you know, brought PJ kind of out of unofficial retirement. She didn't want to do a lot. And thanks to Ben here getting PJ the script. She just said this in a podcast interview that I listened to on the way here, right at the hotel when I got here, that she was very hesitant to read any scripts. We certainly did not have the money that most people have to just basically offer actors at that caliber with a script. But she loved it, and she came on board, and she's been a huge support. Yeah, so I mean, I got a lot more than I ever could have asked for or even dreamt of with those characters and those actors.
Yeah, no, it shows on the screen for sure. Well, before I may keep going on and on, but I want to see if anybody has any questions to ask. Oh.
This was a great 70s style or
Thank you.
so I wanted to bring a real war story back instead of what we're going through now.
Thank you. I hope if you're not on Instagram, you start an Instagram and tell everyone. that's like that means everything, because that was the most conscious effort that I had through all of this. So the Blu-ray, which is out now on Epic Pictures website, it has a 2-hour making of documentary, and you see in there, like, my goal was make it late 70s, early 80s, through everything. And that even goes into a lot of the acting styles and stuff like that, you know. And the mustache, yeah. Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that, because it's difficult to do that now, because everybody wants polished eye candy. And nothing against that, like that's great. And like, you know, It Chapter 2, you know, stuff like that, that's what everybody expects now. So it is interesting to sit back and watch people like you who get it. They're like, oh, this is what it is. And other people are like, you know, want it to be all glossy and stuff, but that's not. All the effects were practical. You know, every effect you saw in there was built by Justin Mabry, who trained under Tom Savini, and I don't even know if Justin knows how to turn on a computer. It's just make practical effects. So I appreciate you saying that. That was our main goal. Thank you. You have a question?
Yeah. I don't know where to begin. I'm a filmmaker as well, but I know the pain and the struggle of, oh my God, how do we make something from nothing? And really impressed what you did with, especially the production value, the cinematography, and the production design. Really sells what you had there. Can you talk about like the carnival sets? Because to me, that seems like the most intimidating and possibly expensive part of or sets to build and create.
Only reason we ended up shooting in LA. I wanted to shoot everything in Ohio with the 3 locations. My production designer, who I mentioned earlier, Sean McKinney, this is the weirdest thing, but he's friends with a bunch of carnies, basically, like literally. This dude is the weirdest guy ever. But he's friends with these guys, and they run the LA Circus. And the LA Circus is not a real circus. It's a place that rents out all that stuff you saw they rent it to American Horror Story, Carnival, Greatest Showman, 31, all that stuff. Anything circus related in LA, they do it. So he told me about them, and he's like, you know, we could go there and they have basically an empty parking lot, and we can just pick up a bunch of stuff that we want out of their storage and build something.
But this is stuff they rent out.
This is stuff they rent out, yeah. So everything, the trailers, the tents, but I had to go there for 2 days, and literally, I mean, this is like just a sea of stuff. And you go through, and normally, you know, like for 31, for instance, Rob would go through and just pick stuff, and there's this little lady named Winnie who is walking behind and writes down all the stock numbers of everything, and then adds it all up, and then that's what it costs. We could not do that. So Sean basically worked a favor with Winnie, who owns the place. And again, it was just dumb luck that she also was sick and tired of all the Hollywood BS. So she was actually, her position was, let me help out the little guy, take whatever you guys want. We paid her, but not what we should have. We basically fed them lunch for the day. Yeah, and I went through and I drew, I did all the wardrobes, I did as far as like all the set design, my fiance Lindsay right there, who color graded the film, we shopped for everything, like all the TVs, everything you see, we would just go to thrift stores and pick up and drove it to set, like in a rented van. But the carnival stuff, I just drew out how I wanted it to be. The midway, exactly where I wanted all the tents, and then we went there, and then like the hand-painted signs Sean painted on site and just put them up. And then what's interesting is the very first thing we shot at all in the film was the midway. That's all the money we had. So in the movie, everything in the midway area throughout the whole film, that was shot over 2 days in LA. All the backstage stuff and all the interior tent stuff was shot 1.5 years later, and that was all separate set that we built. So yeah, it's funny you say that, because I look at it now and I'm like, holy shit, how do we pull that off? Because we didn't have any money, but it really was just working with the right people and just going through there, and I guess having the vision of exactly what I wanted, and fortunately they had the stuff to fit that vision. Yeah, and it was a crazy process through, you mentioned the cinematography, which I appreciate. I storyboard everything myself. I have every shot meticulously planned out, and that helps speed up our ridiculously tight schedule. But we had to match a lot of stuff because, like, for instance, when Tony Todd's character is looking from around the semi and he sees Mike in the midway, again, that's a year and a half apart from each other. When we filmed Mike running down the midway, Tony Todd was a distant, a dream. Like, we never would think we would have had Tony Todd. When we shot Tony Todd, he's behind a semi with a blue light in a parking lot and just going, shit. And that's it, and disappearing. And that's the whole thing. Like every, the tent, when they're in the tent looking, out at the very beginning, that's my hand, because when we shot that, it was me and 3 other crew. That's all we had, looking into the midway. And so a year later, we shoot the inside of that tent, and it's crazy. But I guess if I could sum it up, it would be just finding good people that appreciate passion in what we're trying to do here in this little world of independent filmmaking. And that's hard. It's, I say we got lucky with Winnie, and we did in the LA circus, but again, we didn't shoot it in 30 consecutive days. The reason it took so long was because we ran into a lot of very special people. Not actually special. That was sarcasm. Awful people. I hope that answers your question.
Anybody else have any questions? Or?
What's your next project?
I'm in development right now for something completely unrelated to Candy Corn. It's another feature, a horror, that I hope to be shooting next spring, that will be shot consecutively on 16 millimeter film and done the right way. That's all I can say right now.
And why are you choosing 16?
Why 16? I never want to shoot digital again. I didn't want to shoot this digitally, but I also didn't want to shoot it over the course of 2 years. I want to shoot film for many reasons. How I learned. I miss the medium of film. I think there's an integrity, just like if anyone in here has ever listened to the Beatles on vinyl versus on your phone, there's a difference. And 16, for the particular story that I'm doing next, is dirty, is the right amount of dirty and grit for the story that I'm doing.
And what was your budget for the film?
I'm not legally allowed to say, but whatever you think it was about 1/10 of that. No matter how small you think it was much smaller than that. And the people that finally invested, it's a part of our agreement that I would never tell what they put into it. Very good.
So, your question right there?
I want to talk about the score a little bit and when we can expect to see it maybe on vinyl.
Yeah, great question. So I did the score with a good friend of mine, Michael Brooker, and the way I did that, I would write things that, so like as we would shoot, I would write little pieces and then I would send them to Michael. He has a studio in Austin, Texas, and he would sort of add other instrumentation and beat them up, and we'd sort of bounce files back and forth that way. By the end of our production, I ended up having half the score on my phone, so I would just listen to it while we were shooting to keep that painstaking pace that I like. But yeah, I mean, it was something that originally I wanted 1 to 3 theme songs, that were reminiscent of my favorites: Phantasm, The Exorcist, Halloween, things like that. It got to the point where there just wasn't a time to really come back to a theme, because the story's always kind of just like, all right, and that was inspired by the Happy Birthday to Me thing, where it's like, nix this one on to the next one, on to the next one. And so there's not that moment. So we ended up just compiling this catalog of stuff that we wrote, and yeah, we ended up having a week. I went down to Austin and we just sat in the studio for 15 hours a day and just composed the entire thing all the way through, and that's that. And it's coming out on Burning Witches Records. It goes on sale on Halloween on vinyl and digital, and it's beautiful, beautiful little collection that they put together. So
Very cool.
yeah, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Or? Good. Oh, next one.
Quick question about the actor who plays Gus. I don't recall his name, but I know he's kind of a weird character actor who was like the greasy strangler playing like weird greasy people. So were you planning on casting like him particularly, or some actor for that role? Was he just like perfect fell into that?
You would think I wrote it for him, but no, I gave Pancho Moller the script. Pancho was the first actor that we had on, and he read it and called me immediately after. Like, first time Pancho ever read the script, he literally called me. He's like, dude, I love it. I've got the perfect guy for Gus. I'm like, all right, everything's cool with your character? Yeah, you gotta meet this guy though for Gus. His name's Sky Elabar. I had never heard of the Greasy Strangler. And I was like, all right, well, send me, you know, some stuff on him. And he sent me one picture, and I was like, yep, give me his number. That's Gus, and that's him. Like I got the powder blue pants, and I bought the white loafers on Amazon. Everything else is his wardrobe. The glasses are his, and it was so funny because like I called him up, and I don't know if anybody's ever seen the Greasy Strangler or seen interviews with him or anything, but that's him. Like there wasn't much acting. And like I'd get on the phone with him and he'd just be like, dude, candy corn, man, let's figure this out, man. And we would just sort of talk about it, and I was just like, dude, what am I gonna tell this guy? Like, and it was kind of funny because he wanted to take it like and do something like, you know, I'm like, I'm sorry, man, like what you're giving me now, this is Gus. He's like, all right, well, what if I did this? And I was like, you know, and with the wardrobe, I was like, hey, I got this picture, and I texted it to him. I was like, do you think, like, would you be cool wearing glasses like that? And he, like, sent me a picture of him. He's like, these are my glasses. I'm wearing them right now, bro. Like, all right, man, cool. So what about this, and I found a picture of that jacket. It's like a leather, and it squeaks when he walks. And I sent him a picture. I was like, take a shot in the dark. Is this yours? He's like, yeah, dude, that's my good jacket. I wear it everywhere. All right, cool. Bring it. And he was amazing. He showed up, and you know, he had such a good time, and he's, you know, he was great. He was absolutely perfect for the character. He's one of my favorite things about the movie. He's begging me to do a spin-off where there's a whole other film about Gus and Chet, but it's what would have happened if he didn't die, and he's got a part for Shirley and all that. That's not what I'm doing next, I can promise you that. But
it's dirty though.
Yeah, it'd be a great 16mm art house film.
Have you seen his short? Was it Pet Monkey? Is that it?
Oh yeah, I've been showing you Pet Monkey. That was the one that Eric did with him.
When you've been in a makeup trailer with Sky Elabar undressing, you've seen all you want to see of Sky Elabar. So I believe the shorts are good, but I've got my fix.
So I'll take the last question. So when does Candy Corn 2 come out? And no, but seriously, like what are your thoughts about if there is a next incarnation? Is there?
I wrote it, I started writing the script, and then I just kept writing the script, and I kept writing to the point where I had like a 420-page script, and I'm just like, I can't do this, you know? So when we got serious about it, Courtney came on. Courtney kind of taught me, you know, Candy Corn's the second movie set I've ever been on. 31 was the first. I don't know, you know, how sets work and how movies are done. I just want to make a movie, man. And so he kind of was like, look, here's how many pages we can shoot in a day. Here's how we're gonna get to the end of this thing alive. And I was like, all right, well, you know, basically we had to get the script down to basically like 90 pages to be able to finish this thing. So I had to cut a lot of stuff out, and what I did was, instead of just mixing it, I just started another script. and then that turned into another script. So what I'm getting at is I have 2 more candy corn scripts, and a lot of the questions that I didn't answer in this are in those, like, what is Bishop Gate talking about when he's talking to Dr. Death? What does Dr. Death mean by I will never die? You know, what does he mean by, you know, tell them the truth about you, about Jacob? You know, that's Hitchcock 101. People are afraid to do that now. But I didn't have a studio telling me what to do, so I did it. But it's like, you know, Hitchcock always said the audience doesn't need to have all the answers, you know. And so that sort of inspired this candy corn universe, and I would love to do it. I mean, you know, I've talked internally about how cool it would be to take, I have no shortage of ideas, turn it into a mini-series, you know, or do 2 more feature films. But there's ultimately an arc that I have and a storyline that this is the beginning. This scratches the surface. There is a middle and an end. And Tony, Courtney, I mean, Courtney's excited as a producer. Obviously, he can't come back. What with his head being lopped off and everything. I'm sure Sky Elevar could find a way to make it happen. But yeah, Tony and Pancho are 100% on board. They know the plans I have for the characters, and they are very excited to do it. And I hope that we can. I hope this gets people excited enough, gets on people's radar, like it is. I mean, it's, you know, I'm not tooting my own horn. You're a producer on this, so I'll toot everybody's horn. But, you know, it's one of the top-selling horror films on iTunes and Amazon right now. It's the highest-grossing film Epic Pictures has had, you know, as far as for how long it's been released. And that's amazing. That means people are aware of it. People are sharing it. They're talking about it. You know, some people, as you know, really love it. Other people might be waiting outside to murder me for making it, but they're talking about it. That's what I wanted. So I hope that what can happen is we're in a position to where we can do more with this story, and it's done the right way. It's done with a crew that isn't family and friends pulling favors, you know.
In less than a year and a half.
Less than a year and a half, it'd be really nice. Have a real budget, and really, I love these characters. I think there's a lot to them. I love how attracted a lot of fans seem to be to them, especially like I was talking to Kenny about, you know, Jacob, and like she's had so much to say about the character of Jacob and how it spoke to her, and I hear that all the time. Turns out horror fans were picked on a lot. Who would have known? Just kidding. I knew. You know, so that's my hopes for it, but I definitely want to take a break from that world, go do this other thing, maybe 2 other things, and just see how Candy Corn finds its footing and finds its audience, and then come back and do the continuation with the service that I think it deserves. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, I know I'm looking forward to it. So, but dude, thank you so much for coming out here. And thank you everybody for
Hey guys, so after the screening here, after the Q&A, I'm here with the director, Josh Hasty. Josh, awesome movie, by the way. I'll give my full thoughts later. What do I really think about it? But I am curious, you said this project had took you like 2 or 3 years, and was a really labor of love, really.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm kind of curious because this is an independent horror film. And you kind of talked about big budget versus independent a little bit. I'm kind of curious, you don't hate big budget horror. You tend to embrace it, but you more like the independent style.
Yeah, I mean, big budget stuff's great. I mean, there's some of the best movies ever made. I mean, Spielberg, for instance.
Well, yeah, exactly.
The biggest of big budget. You know?
I mean, Duel.
Yeah. I mean, every I love certain big budget stuff, and there's low budget stuff that I'm not crazy about too. But I think for me, it's I guess because of the world that I live in, where I don't have big budget opportunities. So you do embrace you know, I love cinema, and a lot of the films I'm inspired by, especially in the horror genre, starting with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you know, Halloween, Phantasm, you know, a lot of these things, they're now huge entities, but they were not at the time. They were just a few people with a camera running around trying to tell a story, and that's exactly what Candy Corn is. You know?
So you're hoping like years from now, kind of like with the Halloween franchise, you'll have the Candy Corn franchise where like eventually like the Druids will come in and everything like that, and suddenly you're really...
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know about all that, but it would be nice for people to, you know, if people embrace Candy Corn for that long, that would be amazing.
And that would be great.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious on your thoughts of new school horror versus old school horror, because technically your film almost categorized in like old school horror. You have a lot of new school stuff. You talk a little bit about It Chapter 2 and a few other things. What do you think about it? Do you think like the new school is just as good as the old school, or do you feel like it's still something's missing exactly?
I think, you know, it depends on the particular film. I think certain new films, they're amazing. There's a lot of new stuff like what Robert Eggers and Ari Aster are doing. It's like, it's amazing. It's original, it's different, it's outside of the box. You know, and it's stuff you really couldn't have gotten away with back in the day.
No.
Or at least it wouldn't have been as widely accepted as it is now.
Sure.
But, you know, I think there was a time with old school horror where it was brand new, you know, like people like Tobe Hooper and John Carpenter, you know, Don Coscarelli, they were pioneers. They were doing stuff that hadn't been done before.
Yeah, I mean,
it's really hard to do that.
I mean, you look at something like Phantasm, nothing had been done like that before.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just, they had their influences, but they did their own thing with it. And I think it's just, you know, like with anything, with music or any form of art, it's gotten to the point where it's like, it's hard to invent something new.
It is. Everything's pretty much been done. I mean, even in Candy Corn, a lot of it has already been done before in other films, but it's spinning it in a different way.
Yeah, and I think that's what I wanted to do with Candy Corn, and I think that's, in my opinion, where you can nod to the old school stuff, if you will, but do it in the framework of an original new story, you know, or have fun with it. But that's the thing, is Candy Corn isn't trying to be new, or not. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm not trying to say you've never seen this before. It's like, I'm very well aware of what it is, and I'm trying to, rather than trying to just appease you and pander, which I think a lot of new films do, not all of them, but a lot of them do. I'm trying to just say, hey, let's just turn our phones off, turn our screens off for 85 minutes, and let's go back to the late 70s, early 80s and watch something as if we're seeing it for the first time. Let's just have fun watching a slasher film that, like, you know, I keep mentioning like Carpenter, but like there was integrity with Dean Cundy's cinematography. There was an artistic, you know, spirit in all of their films, and that's been lost, I think, starting in the 80s, you know, and moving on. So, I mean, that was my goal, and I don't know. I like things of both old and new.
And I am curious because there's a lot of influences here. What are, like, if you had to say like your like top 5 favorite horror director of all time? And I know that's you know, because this has a lot of influences.
Yeah.
I kind of figure you have a few that I can guess, but I'm not gonna.
I mean, I just mentioned a few of them: Tobe Hooper, John Carpenter, Don Coscarelli. It's tough to say beyond that because there's so many. Like, those three to me are.
They're sort of the top tier.
They're the top, that for me, that I was introduced to from my dad, who introduced me to horror.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, there's so many newer directors. There's directors that didn't exclusively do horror, you know?
Yeah.
But, there's people like, I love Alejandro Iñárritu.
Great director.
Not really horror, but there's some scary stuff in some of his films, you know?
Yeah, that's true too.
I don't know. I think after those three, I think after that, it's a pretty level playing field among probably another 20 directors. And that's the thing, is there were a lot of great directors like Tommy Wallace who who did stuff that they weren't necessarily John Carpenter or whatever. Maybe they did a couple horror films here and there that meant a lot to me that I love. So that's the conundrum I always have, and I talk with my friends about, is like, if you say your favorite film, okay, my favorite horror film is Rosemary's Baby. Yeah. Roman Polanski is not my favorite director. Okay. So it's like that sort of, like John Carpenter is one of my favorite directors. I don't love every John Carpenter film.
True.
So it's like
Ghost of Mars.
I'm not gonna say which ones, but it's same, and that could be said for your favorite bands or anything. So it's like, I don't know. I always love thinking about that. Like,
and I am curious. One other question. It's a two-part question. What is your favorite underrated horror movie, and what is a horror movie that you consider really terrible that other people might like?
Oh God. Favorite underrated horror movie?
Yes. One that not many people would really like give that one a chance type of movie.
Well, what's so funny is a lot of movies I think that people like now because they're cool to like is like The Shining. Yeah. Like, it's so funny because The Shining, if you were to watch it now, people would they wouldn't even make it through it. They would say it's boring, it's too slow, Jack's awful, like, which is stuff people said when the movie came out. But it's become such a part of pop culture. It's just cool to like or whatever. So I don't know. I think a lot of Kubrick is synonymous with genius and with filmmaker, but I rarely meet someone who can actually have a conversation with me about his films. Because I think that they just know his name. So I would put The Shining on there, of a film that I don't think it'll ever have enough credit. And it's funny to say Rosemary's Baby, because when it came out, it changed the film industry entirely. But nowadays, again, it's like, there's no Rosemary's Baby merchandise anywhere. It's not a part of the pantheon of famous horror franchises. So I don't know. I might have to put Rosemary's Baby up there.
And what's the one that you think is bad?
Man, I don't know. It's hard.
See, being a filmmaker, because you don't want to hate on something.
No, I don't know. I mean, I would say even in films that I have seen that I haven't been crazy about, I can always find something that I like. I really can. And yeah, I don't know. I might have to respectfully decline answering that, because I know what it takes to make a movie. Even the worst of the worst movies were still always more difficult to make than it would be for me to say it was garbage.
Fair enough. Okay. I tried. All right. Well, you can definitely catch Candy Corn on Blu-ray. It's on demand, everything like that. And definitely, there's a lot of great voices in horror. You might definitely be one of the next ones, sir.
Thank you.
So definitely catch what he does next. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Wow, guys, that was a really great screening of the movie. I got to talk to Josh Hasty, which I was not honestly expecting to talk with him whatsoever, but that was really cool, getting a chance to talk with him, getting to film the Q&A, and I just want to say that I am really happy for the little theater to honestly host a screening and let me obviously film some of the stuff inside. I really appreciate that too. Not bad at all, guys. Some really cool information, and again, a really great crowd. And I just thought that these sort of more personal sort of screenings and everything, I think you get to really engage with the movie a little bit better. I really do like that a lot. So I definitely really enjoyed it quite a bit. Well, let's head home, and then I will definitely give you my full thoughts. Alright guys, I am back now. At driving an hour and a half, come back here in order to give you my full thoughts on Candy Corn. Now, I did not win the poster. I was really hoping I was going to win it, but unfortunately, I don't really do well with raffles. My name usually doesn't come out, so I kind of figured I wasn't going to win it, but I did try anyways. A lucky guy did end up getting the poster, and the director and the producer ended up signing it for him, and that was really cool of them to do that. I hope he enjoys the poster. I hope he doesn't put it on eBay or anything. I mean, I'll try to get it if he does, but I hope he keeps it and enjoys it. But on to the actual review now, guys, and this movie, it's about this group of guys who are now like late teens, early 20s, somewhere around there. And for years and years and years, they have been doing this sort of Halloween prank on this mentally challenged guy named Jacob. And they've been doing it now for such a long time, it's basically just become like a tradition every single year. They're going to pick on this guy, they're going to embarrass him, and they're going to have a good laugh out of it, and they just move on with their lives, and next year they're going to do the exact same thing. And this year is a little different because some of the guys, they sort of question whether they should do this anymore. Should we pick on them? Are we kind of getting too old for this? And the leader of this group of guys is basically like, no, we've been doing this for years. It's a tradition now. You know, stop fussing about it. Why are we even talking about this? Let's just do it. And these guys are like, oh, okay. And they all fall in line, and they're going to do this prank yet again. But this time is a little different because Jacob has been employed by this sort of traveling sort of freak sideshow that sort of goes from town to town. And their ringleader is none other than Dr. Death, played by Pancho Millar. Now, Pancho Millar was in Rob Zombie's 31 and also in 3 from Hell. And he does a great job here with a character that's very sarcastic, a little bit mean-spirited, but somebody who is very loyal, believes in family, believes in, you know, trust and that, you know, an eye for an eye. And basically that's what he says to Jacob. He says, you know, when you're with us, you're family. You are family here. You are a part of us. You're one of us, and we will protect you no matter what. And so that night, the prank happens. These kids are going to pick on him, and he starts to fight back. And they're not having any of it, and they basically beat the living shit out of him. They literally beat the living crap out of this guy, and so much so that he ends up dying. And you would think that's the end of it. There's really nothing left here, and, you know, this traveling sideshow is just going to move on, and that's it. But no, that's not the case, because Dr. Death, he wants revenge. This cannot stand. Jacob is family, and they do not get away with this. And so he ends up taking out this mask. He ends up taking out this sort of ritualistic book, it looks like, citing some passages from it, and putting the mask on Jacob, and Jacob comes back to life. And he comes back to life in order to seek revenge on the people that did him wrong. You know, it's interesting because not every indie horror film is created equal, and it's honestly the truth, guys, because I've seen quite a bit of indie horror, and sometimes I don't like that they go for the cheap thrills. I don't like that it just feels like they sort of half-assed it a little bit. That you didn't feel the kind of passion that the filmmakers had, that they just hopefully did whatever and just plopped it onto the screen, and that's what you get. It doesn't feel like there's a passion there sometimes. But other times, there's some indie horror films where there's a lot of passion, and you can really feel it. And this movie has that in spades. I really enjoyed this one, man. I really did. And, I mean, the performances alone, I think, are really worth it. I think, again, Pancho Millar does a really great job here, but I also think a lot of the younger actors here who are playing sort of, you know, late teens, 20-somethings, I think they do a really good job. I mean, there are some indie horror films where the acting is a little choppy. Here, look, they know they're in an indie horror film. They know that, you know, they have to go for the, oh my god, I'm scared, and I'm frustrated, and oh my god, I'm terrified. I think they pull it off really well. I think they're committed to trying to make this thing work. I like sort of the relationships between the characters. You get to know a few of them. When the revenge happens, you feel terrified in the moment. I like what they do with these roles. They're not the best horror actors you've ever seen in your life, but by far they certainly are not the worst, guys. And I think they do a pretty good job with the material that they're given. On top of that, you also have a few horror veterans in here as well. You have Courtney Gaines, you have PJ Soles, and you have Tony Todd. Now, you know, I think it's nice to have some of these horror veterans in a film like this because I think it gives a certain level of credibility to the film that it might not have otherwise. And because it's very interesting, I think a lot of us horror fans, I think we stick to the classics. I think we love the classics. I think sometimes I think it's tough for us to get invested in new material because we've seen it all, we've heard it all, there's nothing new to really be gained in the genre. So sometimes I think some of these indie horror films have a hard time sort of getting an audience. And I think when some of us horror fans see a name like Tony Todd or Courtney Gaines, I think we're like, okay, they must have been interested in this project some way, somehow, to have wanted to be a part of this thing. So I think, again, it gives that certain little bit of horror cred where fans are willing to give it more of a chance. And I thought they actually did a really great job, man. I mean, you have Courtney Gaines playing the sheriff in this town, and he plays sort of your typical local, small-town type of sheriff who, you know, is sort of, you know, just going about his time, but doesn't really think this type of stuff really happens in his community, and once it does, he has to be more stern and sort of take charge. And I thought Courtney Gaines did a really great job with this role, something different that I hadn't seen from him before, to be honest with you. And then you have sort of PJ Soles playing the sort of assistant secretary in this sort of police station, and you know, it's a small role. She has some funny moments here. She has some sort of more dramatic and being concerned type of moments. I think PJ does a great job, man. I really do. And I've met PJ Soles in person a few times at conventions, and she is a joy to talk to. And so anytime I see her in something new, I always want to give it a chance because she's really just a really kind soul. And it was really great to see her in this as well. And on top of that, Tony Todd, man. And now, Tony Todd has a very small role here as sort of one of the assistants and the handlers for sort of this sideshow, an assistant to Dr. Death in a lot of ways. And, you know, as I said, it's a very tiny role for Tony Todd, but, you know, there's an interview with Tony Todd where he talks about this movie in the same way that he talks about a movie like Hatchet, where he talks about how when he first ended up really getting on board with Hatchet, he got on board the movie because he liked the director, he liked the idea for the movie, he liked the script, and even though it was a sort of blink and you'll miss it type of cameo, he was hoping that if this movie was successful, that maybe he would go on to sort of have a bigger role in the next movie. And that actually happened. So he took a gamble on an independent horror film that actually paid off. And in a lot of ways, he's hoping that Candy Corn will be much like Hatchet, where if it is very successful, then if we do get another installment, then he'll have a much bigger role. So, you know, sometimes these horror actors, they take sort of a gamble, but I think sometimes, like with Hatchet, it will pay off eventually, and that's what he's hoping for with Candy Corn. But he did a really great job, man. He honestly really, really did. And again, Tony Todd, man, I've met him a few times at conventions as well, and he is such a really, really sort of heartwarming guy, very talkative, really loves the fan base, loves horror. And for me, he's just one of those guys that deserves all the success that he really gets. So even though it's a really small role, and some people would be disappointed with that role, just understand that if this movie is really successful, we could see more of Tony Todd in the future in a Candy Corn 2, perhaps, guys. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. But, you know, I will say this. You know, outside of the acting, which is all really, really great, at least to me it is, the kills itself are not bad. Now, the kills, they are gory to a certain degree. You get a lot of blood and a lot of, you know, blood coming out of people's mouths, and, you know, you get a little bit of stabbing here and there. You don't see everything. And I know maybe that might upset a few people, maybe that might not, but you have to also understand with indie horror that sometimes they just don't have the budget to do these over-the-top graphic style kills. Sometimes they can do a little bit of blood and gore, but a lot of it is left to your mind and your imagination, and I'm okay with that. Sometimes a little bit goes a long way. As somebody who, you know, loves a movie like Psycho, you know, sometimes less truly is more, and so I'm okay with it, and I like the creativity that they did with the budget that they had. Because you have to remember that, of course, with these indie films, they don't have a big budget like some of these bigger, more sprawling horror tales that some of the bigger studios do. They have to be a little bit more creative. So you may get a little bit of blood and gore, but how they shoot it and how it actually comes on screen, you know, can still be really powerful. And I think that's what they did here, guys. And on top of that, the movie takes place during, I believe it takes place during the 80s, which is really great because, you know, I really do like modern day horror. I think modern day horror can be really great, but the problem with modern day horror is that with sort of the advent of cell phones and the internet and everything, sometimes you think to yourself, well, geez, all they really need to do is just have a click of a cell phone and just, you know, the cops are going to be here in a second. They could dial 911 easily on the internet. Sometimes the tension is really taken out of there. And with this, you still get a lot of the really great tension and a lot of the really great sort of grippingness of it because, you know, it's not as easy to call for help. You have to have a rotary phone where you have to literally you have to dial it, and there's a certain amount of tension and where you're like, oh my god, just get out of the house. And I like that. It lends a little bit more sort of credibility to me to when the horror actually happens, which I think is actually really cool, guys. I mean, it's really interesting here because I think you have a really cool villain in Jacob. I love the mask. I love how he sort of, you know, stalks his victims. It's very sort of Michael Myers-esque. And he leaves sort of a trail of candy corn near the body. Sometimes the candy corn will be in the person's body as well. I sort of like the signature thing of leaving the candy corn there. And on top of that, there's just a lot of really great atmosphere in the movie. You can tell that even though they had a small budget, I think they really used it in a lot of creative and interesting ways. And the one thing I really wanted to mention is the music here, because the music really feels so much like Carpenter, man. Really sort of like 70s and 80s Carpenter. And I just love that, dude. It felt like the director really was influenced by people like Carpenter, Wes Craven, Tobe Hooper, Steven Spielberg, people that he really grew up loving and influenced by their films and really wanted to sort of take an homage to a lot of their work, and it really does honestly show, guys. And, you know, to be honest with you, there's a lot of really great indie horror out there that have come out in the past few years. I mean, you have things like The Barn, which I think is actually really, really great. I think The Barn's a really great indie horror film. You have something like Don't Fuck in the Woods, which I think is a very creative horror style film, and, you know, take sort of, you know, campers and, you know, sort of an alien coming down and killing people in a really unique and interesting way. And of course, I can't forget something like Terrifier as well, that just really just like turned the horror world on its head. I mean, like I said, there's some really great horror stuff out there, guys. And, you know, I'm always telling you guys that basically, you know, a lot of this big budget horror stuff is really good and it's really well done, and I really love seeing people really embrace horror on a sort of big scale in the theater. But it's independent horror, especially stuff from the 70s and 80s, that really sort of made the genre what it is today. I mean, you look at something like Halloween and it really transformed it. It really just transformed this whole genre and really took it in a very unique and interesting direction that is still being felt to this day. I really love these type of films, man, and I think over time, I think this movie, Candy Corn, I think it's going to find a really great audience over time. I think it's going to, over years, will become a Halloween staple for a lot of people. I consider it the same as something like Trick or Treat, which I think Trick or Treat took a long time to find its audience. But I think over time, I think people started to respect it more and more and more. And I think people really started to sort of like have it be sort of a Halloween tradition to watch every single year. And I think that's what this is going to be, guys. I really honestly do. I think it's really inventive, really interesting. I think that Josh Hasty is definitely one of those independent horror directors to really watch out for. And I think he's somebody that you can really feel takes the love of a lot of these older horror directors and really spins it into his own unique way. And even though the budget is not big or sprawling, I think he really uses it to the best of his ability. I will say this though, the movie is a little bit slow going, and there's points where maybe it could have been ramped up a little bit more, just a tiny bit more. It felt sometimes where you're kind of waiting for something to happen, but outside of that, though, I think that really goes towards the tension of the movie, and I think, again, a movie that does sort of the cheap thrill stuff, I think I much prefer something like this, which is taking its time and really giving you something unique and interesting and something that really harkens back to a lot of the great horror stuff from the 70s and 80s, which I always definitely appreciate, guys. So honestly, I really do recommend this one quite a bit, guys, and I think this was definitely one that you should definitely check out, whether you're checking it out in October or whether you're checking out in any month, because no matter what, horror is great all year round for sure, guys. Candy Corn. Guess I was in the mood, guys. I hope you enjoyed all of the video. I hope you enjoyed checking out the little theater. I hope you enjoyed the Q&A with Josh Hasty. I hope you enjoyed my interview. I hope you enjoyed the review, guys. If you did, definitely give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think of Candy Corn and what you think of indie horror versus big budget horror. What is some of your favorite within the indie horror genre? And do you think that there are still very interesting and creative ways that horror can still be presented, or do you think we've definitely seen it all? Definitely let me know your thoughts on all of that, guys. And definitely enjoy Halloween. Definitely enjoy some horror movies. And, you know, like horror movies, Candy Corn, well, definitely doesn't go out of style. Alright, guys. See you later.